Hey, this is Dr. Steve Vargo with another episode of Eye on a Business, and I am privileged today to have two people with me. I have the dry eye master right out of the gate, Dr. Laura Perryman, and also from Science Based Health, I have Zach Denning, Director of Scientific and Professional Affairs with Science Based Health. And Dr. Laura Perryman, you go first. I think a lot of people are familiar with you through articles, through speaking. You're an ophthalmologist, but we see you all over in the optometry world, and we're happy to have you on our team for whenever we can get you. But if you don't mind, for those who aren't familiar, maybe give a little bit background on yourself.
Sure. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for the invitation. It's always a pleasure to serve with Zach. I respect his knowledge base and intelligence a great deal. So it's awesome to be here and with your listeners and viewers as well. My name is Laura Perryman. I grew up in the wilds of Montana, raised by wolves, and there's truth in all teasing. Managed to get myself to college in Salem, Oregon, where I met my husband when I was a sophomore and he was a graduating senior. And 6 weeks before he graduated was just enough time to fall in love. So I followed him. I graduated early from college and followed him up to Seattle, got him through law school. Then I went to med school. But in that interval, I worked on Enbrel as a molecular biologist in the research and division department at Immunex, now Amgen. And so the idea that inflammation is elegant and nuanceable and doesn't require the sledgehammer of steroids is a concept I've had my entire career. And dry eye is a perfect segue with that passion and knowledge base around inflammation and ocular surface disease. The story is fascinating. And that's the crux of why I'm so interested in dry eye disease. My grandmother was a was born here, but her parents were Norwegian immigrants, my great grandparents. And so I have a lot of respect for that old country nutrition as the basis for well-being and health. Um, I always joke with my patients, grandma was right, you are what you eat. So I definitely take the time to talk about nutrition with my patients. So yeah, I'm delighted to bring the hardcore science and the fun stuff and share it with our incredible community of doctors across the world who really care about ocular surface disease and really care about creating wellness and improving the lives of our dry eye patients.
Yeah, thanks. And that's an area that we're going to lean into a lot is the well-being side of it, the health, and looking at dry eye beyond just bad tears. How do we approach that in a way that's more holistic and getting the patient to understand too the whole body effect of it? So we'll come back in a minute. I don't want to leave Zach feeling left out here. And you described him as someone with a lot of knowledge and intelligence. So
Oh
Zach, you got
yeah.
a lot to live up to on this call.
Yeah, I've got a
So
lot to
yeah,
live up to.
tell us about you as well.
Yeah, well, I've been with science-based health for over 25 years. I'm really privileged to have kind of fallen into this opportunity to provide evidence-based nutrition for eye care. This is something that when the company started, was severely lacking, and there was sort of a Wild West and just a grab bag of quality and people self-medicating and um, at the same time, this was also sort of like the dawn of the dry eye era, if you will. There were only a few things available early on, Restasis and punctum plugs and artificial tears. Um, but there was this just sort of massive swelling of patients sort of like waiting to break down the dam. They just needed something. And to be in a position where we were able to develop something that's been greatly beneficial to patients that's based on evidence. We have a clinical trial published on our dry eye product. And to be able to be in a place where I can bring that to doctors and help meet that need has been wonderful. So yeah, I have a science background and I'm passionate about teaching doctors about the science.
Thanks, Zach. And it's going to be great to have you weave some of that into. You mentioned the Wild West, which I think is what it is when we send people off to get supplements, nutraceuticals, and they don't have context or they don't have clear guidance from us. That's exactly what you're walking into at the, at the drugstore, at the pharmacy is the Wild West, a big long aisle of a lot of eye drops and nutraceuticals and supplements that people really don't even know where to begin. So appreciate you having you here to provide some more of that science-based evidence. Laura, I'm going to ask you about, we'll lean right into the wellness perspective because that's something you talk a lot about.
Mhm.
And I'm curious, how do you have those conversations? A patient walks into your clinic. How do you explain and have that conversation with patients that dry eye is not just bad tears, but it's a whole person problem? How do you have that conversation with them?
Well, I look for invitations to go there, right? So not everyone's open to that more holistic approach. I'd say most patients are, especially in the Pacific Northwest, but most patients are really interested in what they can do on a daily basis to help their condition. And so I'll look for, little micro invitations to talk about it. And then when I do find a way to bring it up at some point in the initial consultation, I like to coach them on what I call the 5 pillars of wellness. And it's a simple construct of things you can do on a daily basis to not only help your dry eye, but your whole body, your whole physiology works better under the 5 pillars of wellness. And they're pretty simple. It's hydration, nutrition, exercise, mindfulness, and sleep hygiene. It's really that simple. And when I explain it that way to the patients, like, nutrition's like one of the easiest things you can do. It's one of the lowest cost things you can do for managing your dry eye disease because you got to eat anyway. You want as well, your grandma was right. What you put in the pie hole matters, right? So like, and I'll joke with them. I like to make, jokes to kind of drive the point home efficiently. It's like, listen, if broccoli would fix your problem, I'd be like, you got to learn to love it 3 times a day. But it's not that simple. You've got to eat properly, figure out which foods your body isn't thriving with. I recommend the Whole30 diet often. That's a really interesting way of identifying foods that are not friendly for patients. And typically it's a scripted program. You can go online, get newsletters, support groups, the whole thing. Love it. It's interesting. Sometimes I'll joke and say, now don't kill the messenger, but it's 30 days of no grain, no dairy, no soy, no sugar, no legumes, no alcohol. And they're like, huh. And the partner's like, grr. It's like,
Like, I just came here for glasses, lady.
grr. So, and then I'll tell them a funny story. It's like, hey, listen, I've done it twice. I don't ask you to do anything that I haven't done myself. And I just got to tell you that day 15 on Bourbon Street is hilarious because you're starving and you're the only sober person for miles around. It's actually very entertaining. I recommend it. Part of that nutrition piece is also being mindful of your supplements and not just grabbing whatever's on sale at your mega store, but really picking something that has some clinical evidence behind it. It's just things that are smart. And that's where things like omegas, like Hydroid come in. It's the thinking's all been done for you. The analysis has all been done for you. Now you have a streamlined doctor recommendation on that nutritional piece.
Zach, I want to go ahead. I was going to say I want to circle back to the hydro eye. Let me ask Laura one more question. Then I want to circle back to that. But how do you get people to maintain that change? Because that is the
Mhm.
hardest thing to do, right? Having
Oh,
the
yeah.
conversations, they're hearing it from all their doctors, but getting people to actually change. I read this report once on
Yeah.
people that were given, their doctors said you have to make these lifestyle changes or you're going to die.
Ah.
Almost all of them initially made the changes. Do you know what they
Hmm.
found within 2 years? They did a study. They went back, 90% of them went back to their old way of living, even though it was a life and death scenario. So how do we get, and I've always felt like a great way to sort of build that accountability, and is something as optometrists we don't have is the follow-up, right? We see somebody
Yeah.
once a year in many cases, sometimes more, but we really don't have a mechanism in place. So is there anything that you found in that conversation that really gets them to not just make the change initially, but kind of
Mhm.
stick to it?
Yes, well, I heard several little nuggets in there that I like to work with my patient. One, I'm never one to lead with punishing admonishment for my patients. Like, there's no shame in this game. We just regroup, pick up, and move on, right? So, first of all, I never shame, I never blame, and I say, your body will let you know if you fall off the train. Learn to listen to your body. So I'll coach them on learning to listen to their body, and that's a far greater positive reinforcement loop than if you don't do this, you're going to die. Like, and thank God we don't have to deal with deadly diseases in eye care. Like, that's one of the reasons why I picked ophthalmology. I always cried when one of my patients would die in med school. So I'm like, but I'm
I'm out.
tenderhearted. Anyway, yeah, never learned how to be tough like that. And the other point is support systems, right? So it's true. If I find the patients that have the biggest challenge with sticking with the Whole30 and their nutritional supplements are people with young kids in the house because they're just little carbivores, right? There's like fish crackers, chicken nugs, like all the things that dry eye patients should not be eating. And you don't want to be making multiple meals, but then I'll coach on the green veggie smoothie. We have a recipe that we send in our relation portal and share with the patients. And it's like, I do mine on Sunday night. I just line up all 7 little Ziploc baggies and I chop my veg and aliquot them out, pop them in the freezer. It's ready to rock every morning. So that's simple little things of just like, and it doesn't have to be a whole thing all at once because that can be overwhelming to the patient as well. For making a lifestyle change, it could be like just little pearls here and there, just little habits to dovetail in. That's probably more effective than if you don't do this, you're gonna die in the long run.
Yeah, maybe that was the problem with the whole thing before, as the way they approach it. I think
Mm-hmm.
that clarity on how to eat. I mean, if they're open to our feedback when doctors say you need to eat better, well, what does that mean? A
That's
lot of
so not
patients,
helpful, right? Need to
yeah,
eat
if
better. What the heck does that mean?
right, low fat potato, lower
Yes.
fat potato chips. So, Zach,
And
I've stepped.
there's a judgment built into that as well. So it's
Yes.
like, yeah, it's it's you're not doing you're failing the test now, and now you've got to improve. So it doesn't set it up in a very good light.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Guidance
So,
is underrated.
yeah. Zach, you were starting to say something before, and I apologize. I
Yeah.
interrupted you.
Yeah, so I was just thinking about how Laura was talking about some patients are open to kind of complementary, kind of nutritional and lifestyle changes and that sort of thing. And I think some of this is also just people's misconceptions about dry eye generally. A lot of people may start to notice symptoms and they're like, it's like something that like stuck to your shirt and you're just trying to brush it off. And it's like this little thing that you want, you like just fix it and make it go away. And I didn't have this before, I didn't notice it before.
Mhm.
And I think, as Laura can speak to, I mean, a lot of this is sort of reorienting the patient, like, no, this isn't just this little temporary annoyance. This is part and parcel of your kind of life history, the stresses that you've had,
Mhm.
um, your, your exposure to allergens, to, everything, your medical history. And this is something that's kind of developed over your lifetime. And so kind of recollecting and saying, like, how are we going to address this? Can't just be the quick fix because it also has to go to kind of the root of the problem. What's causing
Mhm.
this? And let's address those things, in an approachable way, one at a time, and not make this really intimidating, but you just have to kind of reorient the patient that it's not like this little thing that's just you're going to get some magic, eye drop, and it's all going to go away forever.
I wish we had a magic eye drop,
Yeah.
a silver bullet. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
But that's not what we're dealing with here, is
Right.
it?
Yeah.
It is a great how do I phrase this? As far as, I guess, if you looked at it as a mode of care, as a specialty, but dry eye is that condition that keeps people coming back.
Mhm.
Even with treatment, right? We're looking at
Mhm,
it like, I'm going to treat you. I'm going to have you come back in a month. I'm going to have you come back in 3 months and check you again. So it sort of builds
mhm,
in that mechanism where hopefully you're giving them the information they need. They might fall off, but you're going to see them back a month or two, 3 months later to look and check and see how they're doing. And that's something we don't have as ODs. Sometimes we're only seeing people once a year.
mhm. Well, I think that's an opportunity to engage differently, right? So, yeah, I mean, I've been in those practices where you just see people, once a year, and that's a valuable service too. But really, I think we're all in the business of lifetime vision, and I think part of the call to action there is prevention, early recognition, early intervention. And I think just a little mind shift instead of reactionary to proactive and preventative is really intriguing because at some point, every single one of those dry eyed patients didn't have dry eye. So, how did it develop? On whose watch? And what can we do about it in the early stages when it's a heck of a lot easier to treat?
Yeah. And getting in front of it that way, I think, is a great way for doctors to address it. You can share the stories of patients that you've had, just like you said, who are struggling. And it does become a struggle when it becomes
Mhm.
chronic and it hasn't been dealt with. And I think it's so much more effective to share stories. Laura, when you were talking before, you said nobody wants to read the white paper. And that's true. One thing we have that I think we drastically underutilize in our ability to communicate with people is stories of other patients who've been there. And I think with dry
Mm,
eye, when you look at somebody and say, I don't want you to get where a lot of my patients are, and if we can stop it now, I think that carries a more of an emotional connection with somebody versus
mm.
trying to scare them into taking it or, some of the other ways that you might find aren't quite as effective.
Well, I think two things, two comments. One, Zach and I like reading the white papers for
Well,
sure.
we do, but we're nerds,
Oh, you're
though. I
talking
mean, that's why,
patients. Oh, yeah.
yeah, patience. Yeah.
Yes. Um, and I lost the other segue. I had a thought there, and oh, so sorry. I lost that train of thought.
I was just talking about how I'm always very interested in how doctors can communicate better that's going to drive better outcomes. And I think sharing patient
Mm.
stories is something that
Oh,
that
yeah.
really can connect with patients versus just giving them a lot of data and FDA studies and statistics that they're not
Yeah,
going
I
to
don't
remember
recommend
anyway.
those.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think I think when a patient feels like you are their ally, when you are their advocate, man, that goes a long way. You're not in this alone. I'm here with you. Like, I'm very interested in your professional development, and I'm not going to let your dry eyes get in the way of your continued success at work. Right. So that sense of alignment, I'm sitting right beside you. There's innovations coming all the time. I'm going to add you to a list. There's an interesting drug that's in phase 2 trials that I think is really interesting for your particular situation. Let's stay in touch. Make sure you come back twice a year because I've got innovations all the time. Let's stay on top of it. But alignment is key, and so that can be achieved through stories, but uh, more, I think what you're really getting to in the anecdotes and the stories is alignment um, with the patient, that they feel cared for.
I think that's a really excellent point, Laura. And I think that also that when you start talking about like nutritional supplements or OTC products, doctors often feel like all of a sudden there's like this pressure they have to sell something. And
Mm-hmm.
they don't want to sell anything. They're doctors. And the good news is that you don't have to sell anything. It's just you're just being a doctor and you can choose your different tools
Mm-hmm.
and whatever that is, you can recommend it with just a very simple prescriptive approach. And you
Yeah.
don't have to be sort of like the used car salesperson. You can, just like this is why I'm recommending this. I really want you to take it. Here's how you use it, and here's how you get it or how long you take it. And it's very simple. So I think a big part of that kind of that dialogue with the patient when it comes to recommending things is just kind of dispelling that sort of myth that like you have to like all of a sudden kind of play this role that you're uncomfortable with.
Hmm. Yeah, it's more of a guidance and a convenience approach
Absolutely.
to stock and dispense curated products in your practice. We don't have a ton. Like we've got some curated skincare, we've got hydro, we've got a very curated set of things, and it's there for convenience. I could
Hmm.
carry more, but then it's that balance between I want to make it easy for you and convenient, and not feel like I'm selling you because that doesn't feel good as a clinician. And to be fair to our colleagues who are just slammed with having to see more and more patients in less and less time, limited resources, like they're doing their best. And so I like Zach's idea of a prescriptive approach, like just a simple little checklist. Stop by the front desk. Here's what you need. I'll see you in 3 months or whatever this is. Like it can be that short and that simple.
And it's, the point you made before about demonstrating just that you care about the patient, you both made that. It's actually been demonstrated in research that that's one of the biggest factors in patient adherence is feeling that the doctor
Makes
actually
sense.
cared
Yeah.
and not taking that approach of lecturing somebody or shaming them, which we can drift into. There's actually a fair amount of data. It's really interesting on diabetes and how the percentage of patients that maintain their blood sugar control is significantly higher when they found out or did the research and the patient acknowledged, it just feels like my doctor really cares about me. And you know what they said? I don't want to disappoint my doctor.
Oh,
So if
that
we
my
can,
dad is living case in point of that. My dad has type 2 diabetes and his A1C is so much better. He's got this new doc who just like is like cheering him on. And he's like, yeah, yeah, I'm doing so good. Like I'm like really, really wanting to like get my numbers down for her. Like it's really cute.
right.
You're right. You're totally right.
Yeah.
And dry eye is also something that like it may not kill you in the same sense that diabetes could, but it has a tremendous life impact. And I
Oh
think
boy.
sometimes it's also sort of like underappreciated by
Mm,
practitioners that it's really tied in with emotional health.
mhm,
People who have experienced trauma are more likely to have dry eye. Stress levels and sleep deprivation. Veterans, for instance, are more likely to
mhm.
have dry eye.
Yeah.
And so it's very tied into our well-being. People with severe dry eye, can, rate it on par with, something like severe angina or, like a really impact. It has a huge life impact. And so I think that it's also important to treat it like that. This is something that's important. It's worth my chair time and it's worth this patient's time to turn this around. And if you can turn this around as an eye doc, you will be the hero to that patient.
I love that, Zach, and I totally agree with you that dry affects so many different parts of our life, and quality of life is impacted. Enjoyment of family time, like when my dry was out of control, like 15 years ago, like I was major grumpy pants. I couldn't participate properly in my family life. It ruined your day. It even reduces silent reading speed, which affects your work productivity. It affects presenteeism, your mental engagement in your daily work. So it's far reaching in the activities of daily life impacts. What I like to do in order to create, that connection is work with the patient to figure out what their top concerns are. So if it's, let's say, for example, it's like, gosh, by 3 o'clock, I'm just really struggling to get my work done at the computer. It's like, okay, I want you to keep track of that. And I want you to keep track of it. So as we make gains, as we get this turned around, I want to see that number go up. So it gives them something a little more specific and zeroed in rather than the global impact of dry eye disease. Give them, or maybe it's contact lens wearing time, right? I love that symptom. It's like, let's keep track of that, of how long you can wear your lenses comfortably and see if we can start to expand that. We did a study using the iLux device for contact lens wearability. And the hypothesis was that it would help the number of hours of comfortable wear. And I was kind of like, yeah, I'm not sure. Let's do the study. Like I didn't, I wasn't sure what we were going to get. I was surprised that we got that amount of increase in contact lens wearing time and comfortable wear. So I think tacking the interventions and the behaviors onto the reward of quantitatively, objectively, subjectively reduction in some of those dry eye complexities is a great way to create engagement with the patient.
And there's always the dual benefit of dry eye in terms of not just improving their lifestyle, but the contact lens component as well, because it's the number
Yes,
one reason people drop out of contacts is just
yes.
they're not comfortable. I was always amazed when I was practicing how many patients came in and they used to wear contacts and I said, well, I can't wear them anymore. And it's, why can't
If
you wear
you're a
them
minus
anymore?
nine myope, that's a big deal.
It's a big deal. But
Yeah.
if it was just discomfort and then you realize that they have dry eye, and you would say, well, do you want to wear contacts again? Oh, yeah, I'd love to wear them again. Well, we can treat the dry eye. It's just, I guess the last doctor just said, well, they're not comfortable. Let's not, you keep playing around with different contacts, but when the underlying issue is really the dry eye. So there's always, I guess from an economic standpoint as well, there's the obviously lifestyle benefit, but also clinical slash financial benefit too of the contact lens component. You mentioned something too. I
Mm,
think was great. What matters to them? You talked about if the patient
yeah.
says, "I can only wear contacts up until 3 o'clock," or I stare at a computer and at 3 o'clock things start going sideways on me. My eyes get red, they get blurry. I can't do my work as well. That matters to them. I think sometimes we forget to go asking the right questions that uncover what matters to them, and we start giving patients our reasons for wanting them to do something. But if it doesn't connect with what's really, matters to them, we're just not going to make that same connection.
That's right. There's a couple of important exceptions where if I see a neurotrophic cornea that's like threatening to break down into a type 2, I'm like, and I got to tell you, I'm really concerned about this. That's so there are a couple exceptions to that, but otherwise, I think that patient-led approach is a good one.
Yeah. Zach, how do you deal with from a supplement standpoint? And I'm sure you would even agree that as a standalone treatment, we're not looking at supplements to solve everything. We'd still want to have the conversation with
Yeah.
hydration, proper eating, well,
Right.
all the things that we're talking about. But from a supplement standpoint, I think what some doctors deal with when talking to patients about supplements is the patient who says, well, you're just trying to make money here. I can get that over the counter. How would you suggest a doctor structures that conversation with the patient to give them the confidence to move forward with that particular doctor and that particular product?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to have it as a stepwise progression. As you said, a supplement and no tool in the toolbox is going to be the magic sort of fix all. And so kind of laying out the roadmap for the patient, sort of saying like your speed score is elevated, and this is what I'm seeing in the slit lamp, and I see you blinking a lot, and your tear breakup time is low, so let's try to improve that and you can bring it into like their quality of life, like what things could this affect. And so, just kind of laying out the roadmap and sort of saying, okay, we have multiple things we can try. I think that a supplement is a good front line. It's something
Mhm.
that most patients are amenable to taking. There's no pre-authorizations. The cost is pretty modest. And then talk about sort of what the other options you're going to look at. And so what else you're maybe going to start right away with the supplement, and build it into kind of something comprehensive. And sort of say, I'm going to see you back in a couple months. And at that point, we'll look again, and then we can talk about the next step. So it's not just like do this, and if that doesn't work, well, I guess we tried and that's it. It's like we're gonna kind of keep working on this, and this is only the first step. And often you're maybe recommending something with a supplement. It's an adjunct. It isn't, there is no one thing that can solve everything in dry eye.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think the patient
I call,
appreciates
I
that.
call that phenomenon, if you add up enough inches, you eventually get a mile.
Hmm.
Right.
It's like these thousand little steps to get to the goal, which is happy, healthy eyes.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
think patients appreciate that as well because I think
Yeah,
sometimes as a patient you feel like, wait, you want me to spend all this money on this therapy
yeah.
and I've never heard of it before. It sounds kind of scary versus
Mhm.
let's try the conservative things first. And then the patient tries that. If it doesn't work, then I think they're more comfortable with moving on to that next step.
Absolutely.
Right. And if you build some success and it does help, they'll see they're going in the right direction. But,
Yeah,
usually they are going to need more. We can say, wow, this is great. We're starting to see some progress, but your glands are still not quite, my meibomian glands are not working quite at their maximum. I think we need to kind of address that. You have some Demodex, kind of and then you kind of you've gained some confidence through having a win on one thing and then building on that.
Can you speak to the? I'm going to give you permission to do this because sometimes we talk about these things as doctors, as a company that makes supplements. We get very focused on the clinical side, which is what it's all about. It's about
Right.
patient care. But
Right.
this podcast is called "I Own a Business."
Yeah.
So let's talk about the business side of this. Business side of dry eye supplements. A lot of my listeners listen to this for practice management tips. So can you share? I'm interested in both your feedback on this. What are the business opportunities that exist?
Well, I think dry eye in general is a great way to kind of add an income stream to your practice. We know, reimbursements, vision care plans, all that it's not getting bigger. And practices are looking for ways to kind of augment their revenue stream, sort of offering things, especially kind of looking at dry. There's a lot of things that are not dependent upon insurance reimbursement. Some are. But you can offer a lot right in your practice from heated eye mask to a supplement like Hydro Eye to um, you know, lid scrubs and lid hygiene products, um, you know, and that isn't going to sort of like all of a sudden sort of turn around your business. But that along with bringing people back for a medical consult, for a dry eye consult, and actually seriously addressing their dry eye, those patients are going to be your biggest advocates. They're going to tell their family and friends. And it's going to bring more success to your practice by really addressing it.
I've always maintained the philosophy that good medicine is good business. And I get a little bashful talking about money, but really, my whole clinical approach is how do I meet the need? And with dry eye disease, there's so many people that are struggling, all the way in every stage of dry eye disease. There's a tremendous amount of need out there. There's more than enough business to go around. And so I think as an eye care community, we're much better off supporting each other and leaning into each other. Like I might have a treatment device that you don't have, and vice versa. We co-manage with a lot of our area eye doctors. For example, Procare, it doesn't fit our business model, so we'll collaborate care with clinics that do have it. So things like that are good practice builders overall, but also community builders. And in the end of the day, it meets a patient need in a way that you're able to pay your bills as an independent practice.
Yeah. And if you're co-managing for surgical patients for cataract and LASIK and things like that, if you can send the patient to the surgeon with a fantastic
Oh,
ocular surface,
yeah.
they're going to, the outcome is going to be better. The patient is going to be happier. It's a virtuous cycle. And,
Yeah.
so it kind of touches on the ocular surface is the, sort of first and largest sort of refracting surface, the air tear film interface. And so, it touches on a lot more than just dry eye. It's also
Mhm.
about vision. And ties in with just about everything else. The glaucoma patients who, you find ways to improve their ocular surface, and especially by not putting another thing on the surface of the eye, might be more compliant with their drops.
Yep. Um, the I tell patients it's like, we're looking at cataract surgery in the not too distant future, but maybe you're about to put a wedding ring on the rest of your lifetime vision. Maybe we should prepare for the big day.
Well,
So that
you've
you
got
can
the
really get your head
analogies.
around
I'm
that.
writing that
Yeah,
down.
I can get my head around that. And it's so fun to like send my patient off to the cataract surgeon and they're like, "You have Sjogren's? Your cornea is gorgeous." I'm like, "Thank you."
It is so much
Just for a
word of
surprise.
mouth, though. Yeah, I mean that whether it's another doctor, whether it's patients. Laura, I'm curious as we kind of close out here for a doctor who's saying, I would really like to be the dry eye master of my area. I'm not looking to be an international speaker, but the branding, I think, is so important from a business standpoint
Mhm.
on something like dry eye. How do you make yourself the go-to person? And I tell doctors this sometimes, look, we get out of optometry school, we're all sort of by default dry eye experts. But the person down the street might just market it better than you.
Mm.
The person down the street might just be better at branding that side of it. Now, obviously, there's an investment in the technology and the people and the knowledge and all that. But what would you say to a doctor saying, I really want to build my brand around this and be known for dry eye in my
Mhm.
community?
Got it. Well, I think it's a journey and a multiplex journey, and it centers around continuing self-education. Like, I've been doing this a long time. Dry is all I do, and I'm still learning like that. And it's so fun that way. So if you're not a lifelong learner, you just want to clock in, clock out, maybe look at a different disease state to treat. But if you're really a great lifelong learner and you love innovation, and you love science and because the body of knowledge is expanding all the time, then dry is a good thing to do. So I think it's uh, you need to get started and small and then continue to grow as your clinical acumen gets better. Like there's so many fine subtle clinical details that can tip you off in the right treatment direction. Even like subtle little historical complaints and clues will be like, I need to make sure that there's not a convergence insufficiency helping to drive this decreased tear production. They grind their teeth. I need to think about bruxism and Botox and like all these different things. So I think it's a process, and all you really need is like a growth mindset attitude. But in practical terms, I think social media can be your friend. I see people doing it really well with before and afters, with cases, interesting cases. I think Instagram is a good platform for it. But part of that's because I don't understand TikTok very well, like how to do it, how to
Me
use it. I
neither.
need lessons, but I think there's ways to market it well. But and then the endorsement of your colleagues, right? So I say the other part of being in the dry community is like almost everyone is like really cool, like nice, kind, cool, collegial, cooperative people. It's not a space if you're a little bit of a lone wolf cowboy, doesn't play nice in the sandbox kind of people. There's a few of them, but there's very, very few of them in dry eye disease, in my humble opinion. So I think you need to be collegial, you need to be a lifetime learner, you need to be curious, and just dive in with both hands, get serious about it. Really, and you'll learn from your clinical cases, right?
Hmm.
My patients are continually teaching me things. So it's fun to take that positive growth mindset approach with it. And that was the other thread I wanted to put in there is doctors' recommendations go a really long way, and that includes things like nutrition, nutritional supplements. Go see my colleague. Like when you develop that type of relationship in your community, and you can build it, like host a journal club once a month. Like there's cool ways to do that. Um, that recommendation from a colleague is a great way to build your dry eye practice. And that comes from taking amazing care of patients, being available, all those sorts of strategies. Doctor recommendations go a long way, whether it's the makeup you use, the nutritional supplements you take, or the colleagues you refer to.
Yeah, and I think it's important to communicate what you do. I mean, there's a lot of practices like their website just has the boilerplate. Yeah, we,
Mhm,
glaucoma, cataract, dry eye, and just list something, and there's not really much
mhm.
there, but
No
really
meat on the bone.
right, talk about what you do and, post about it on social media. If you have sort of an email follow-up system to patients, or newsletter, you can sort of brag about the things that you do or what makes your practice different and differentiate yourself. And you can also kind of talk about sort of like what do we offer in our practice and why do we choose that? Everything from what frames you choose to the products you choose for dry eye. So dry eye, high dry, is very unique. It's backed by a randomized controlled clinical trial. And it has a unique omega fatty acid that you don't find in your diet or fish or flax that has a targeted effect on the tear film. So, highlight what you use, whatever those tools are and what makes your practice different or special, as well as your approach to patients. I think Laura does a great job sort of branding herself as a caring doctor. It's pretty simple. I mean, who doesn't love a caring doctor? I want a caring doctor. I think we all do. So,
Care about you, Zach.
oh, thanks.
Care about you too, Steve.
Thank you. See, you're right, Zach.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's just some of it is just kind of thinking about what's your DNA, who am I?
Mhm.
What is my practice? And just deciding to communicate that to patients and putting that out there, I think is a big part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I care about you guys too. And I thank
Aw.
you so much for being here. Laura, you offer tell us about that as we close out here, a visiting clinician program. And then you have been working on a top secret little experiment
Oh,
project for a minute,
yeah. I got
if you
two
care to
juicy things
share.
for you.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay. Okay. So, number one, we have a visiting clinician program that if you message me on Instagram, I'm Dry Eye Master. I'm this close to 10,000 followers. Help a girl out. Like, please,
Please. Yes.
I'm this close. Message me there and I'll send you the link. But it's really fun because we have a huge checklist and survey of like, what are you interested in learning? Is it pathophysiology? Is it like how these different instruments work? Testing, patient conversations. What is it that you really want to learn? And so what we'll do is once we decide on a date, we stack the schedule with those cases and that situation that the visiting doctor really wants to see. And we have a great time. We slow the clinic down, so there's plenty of, you know, post patient care like summaries and just show them the thought process that goes into stuff, how the workflow is. And it's been a wildly successful program. We have a lot of fun. We've met a lot of really amazing dry doctors around the country that have come to visit us. So if you want a trip to Seattle, highly recommend July, August, and September. Those are the primo times. But we get these random nices of stretch weather in March. So, just pick a date, come on out. Um, the other thing that I've been working on this for 10, 15 years. A patient asked me, Doc, I seem to have trouble tolerating makeup. What do you recommend? And I went, recommend? That's a high bar. Recommend. Oh boy. So I got my little science hat on and my biochemistry and chemistry hat on, and I started doing my little research. And I'm like, oh my goodness, there's nothing I can actually recommend to that bar. So what I've done is custom formulated from the ground up products that are eye centric, that respect the eye. We start here and work out instead of the other way around. The eyes are the epicenter. So that hopefully will be launching in late 2026.
Okay. We'll keep an eye out for that.
Thank you.
Super exciting.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, a definite need. So we would definitely keep our eye on that.
Meet the
Laura,
need.
thanks. Meet the need. Meet the
Meet the
need.
need.
A big theme here. So Zach, anything to close out with? And how do people find out about science-based health?
Well, you can go to sbh.com. You can visit us at any of the major eye care meetings and many of the state and local societies. So the company is Science-Based Health. Our website is sbh.com. And check out Hydra, which is our patented, clinically tested dry supplement, and see how it works in your practice. I think you'll be pleased.
I take it myself.
I'm
Have
gonna,
for a long
I'm,
time.
yeah. Thank you both. This has been tons of great feedback here. Dry eye is an area that I love talking about because I think there's so much opportunity there, so much
Hmm.
untapped opportunity for
Hmm.
patients from a clinical standpoint, from a business standpoint as well, which is a world that I work in. And I think there's so much doctors can learn from people like you on how to approach this in a way. How do we have better conversations with patients? How do we deal with the skepticism? How do we have conversations around the more holistic approach and keep trying new things? I think one thing I'm a big advocate for is always experimenting with new ways of approaching patient care to see what
Hmm.
outcomes you get. Because at the end of the day, all that really matters is the outcome. Are we getting the outcomes that we want for the patient? So that's why I love having these conversations with people who've had success in that realm. I hope people take some insights from this and apply it to their practice, and hopefully they can get some of the same results. So thank you both for sharing.
Enjoy
Thank
the
you so much,
process.
Steve.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you both and appreciate everyone for listening. And with that, we will say goodbye and we will see you in the next episode.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.